Hello guys and welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today's video shows a submission from a man whose wife cheated on him. Yet he's ready to reconcile because he has an even patch-up plan. Let's begin with his submission. I'm a 32 years old accountant who earns pretty well and tries to keep his wife happy. But my wife always compared with me, her friends' rich husbands or boyfriends. She often implied that I should have opted for a different career than the saturated field of accountancy. Well, the funny part is that my wife, let us call her Sandra, does not even have a well-paying job. She has worked as a receptionist in some small office with no promotion for 2 years. Anyways, I'm a calm person and I do not like violence. Hence, I always tried to be calm with my wife while explaining that she could not overspend and save money, and her response will always be terrifying. She would yell at me and call me names for being a miser and penny pincher. She even made fun of me with her friends, calling me a cheap or an incompetent person for earning less. So if you get a picture of Sandra, she was always drawn to people's living luxurious lives or girls having wealthy partners. It would not be wrong for me to say that she regretted marrying me. Anyways, our life was going and her demands never ended. They grew each day and I tried to keep up with her. It had become normal for us to argue multiple times during the day. It was all taking a toll on my mental health and I wanted to get rid of her. I had started hating coming home from work to listen to her endless list of complaints. I knew she was capable of going to lengths for money, but I didn't think she would cheat on me with her cousin. Her cousin was younger than her and a doctor in Houston, Texas. He was staying at a friend's place and Sandra insisted we invite him over to our place for dinner. I agreed and noticed that Sandra took extra time to dress up. She wore her best dress, jewelry, and even makeup. She told me that she wanted to look rich in front of her cousin. I felt it quite awkward, honestly. During lunch, Sandra was in a pleasant mood and kept asking about his job, hospital, and life in Houston. She would even pat him on the shoulder or touch his hand while talking. I signaled her not to do it, but she ignored me. Anyways, her cousin stayed for over 2 months in the city. Sandra would go to meet her, or he would come to our house to meet her. This was funny because they never spoke over the phone, and now she was all over him when he was in town. I was uncomfortable with Sandra being so flirtatious with her young cousin. I even shared it with her, but she brushed away my concerns and said that he would go soon and come after years till she could meet him again. It was understandable to me, but what bothered me was the fact that she would be glued to her cell phone and talk to her cousin all day long. I would often get furious with her, telling her that it is not right to talk to him all day long. But she would dismiss my concerns and tell me that I was jealous of her cousin because he was earning much more than I and had a much more respectful job. I felt angry that she was comparing her cousin to me. A few days later, Sandra bought expensive gifts home. When I asked who gave them to her, she would say that she went shopping for her cousin and he bought them. I told her that she must return it back and should not accept such expensive gifts. She once again burst out at me, telling me that looking at those gifts hurt my ego because I could never afford them. I felt horrible and so I stormed out of the house. I did everything in my control to keep my wife happy, but she was never grateful and always rambled on me and about how her friends were lucky. Despite my warning not to get too frank with her cousin, she still went out with him. But she never listened to me. In fact, one day I had enough. We were at a party and she recklessly joked about how I thought twice before spending money and never fulfilled her requests. I told her it was not true, but she counted all the times when I refused to buy her costly things or denied her request to join a gym, which I knew she could not continue after a week. Her friends laughed at my face for being cheap. Plus, that cousin guy also giggled and said I would buy my wife anything she keeps her fingers on. My wife was highly impressed and smiled at him lovingly. I could not resist the urge to say, "Yeah, if you're so kind to my wife and spend so much on her, I can imagine you would spend a fortune on your wife." The look on his face was fantastic, plus everyone got an idea of how he and my wife were more than just cousins. Sandra and I had a huge fight when we returned, but I felt good about giving her the taste of her own medicine. The following week, she told me that she was going for a weekend in Miami with her friends. Her friends had a shitload of money and could not afford to take her out for a weekend. I did not mind. I was glad I could spend a peaceful weekend at home. But luck wasn't on my wife's side at that weekend, and I learned that she had gone to Miami to cheat on me. Sandra's friend called on our landline and asked me why she was not picking up her phone. I was shocked. I asked her why she had not gone to Miami with the group, and she was dumbfounded. She told me that they had no such plans. I knew that she had gone with her cousin, so I called his cousin and his phone was switched off too. I was beyond furious. I told her friend that she had gone out with some family, and she laughed in my face and said that she's the only close to her adopted cousin in the family. It was clear that Sandra was cheating on her cousin, but I needed more evidences to confront her and file for divorce. Our marriage had already lost its spark, and her affair with her cousin was the final nail in the coffin, so I waited for her to return. I left her a few messages asking her about her flight timings so I could come to pick her up. She agreed and shared the details. I went to the airport to pick her up, but her cousin did not come. They both had booked different flights, so nobody could catch them. When we came home, I told her that her friends had called. She was dumbfounded that I knew about her plan, even though she had planned it perfectly. But I was shocked at her audacity to tell me that she needed to go out of town to freshen up. I asked if her cousin was with her, and she said yes, he was, and managed all the trip expenses. I was furious and told her to leave the house. She told me it was not a big deal and nothing had happened between them, but I found it hard to believe. She started shouting at me for accusing me of a heinous thing. She went to her room and slept. I picked up her cell phone and checked the messages. She had put a password on her WhatsApp and her gallery. She kept the same password for everything. It was her parents' anniversary combined with her birth month. So after a few trials, I cracked the code and accessed her pictures. She had a mind-blown time in Miami and cheated on me several times over the weekend. She had pictures and videos of her cousin being intimate with her. It boiled my blood, and I transferred everything to my phone. The next few days, I stalked her cousin online and learned he was engaged to be married to his beautiful girlfriend, who was from a wealthy family. I knew what I had to do. The next day, I told my wife that I knew she slept with her cousin, and now I will file for divorce. She had no ounce of guilt. In fact, she told me that I never took her on trips, so she used this opportunity to go out with her cousin. She left the house and I filed for divorce. I kept tab on both my wife and his AP. They were having an excellent time until it was time for her cousin to leave for Texas, and then she had nowhere to go. As expected, she called me and asked if I could reconsider the divorce. She faked being sorry and said she would never cheat on me again or compare me to anyone. I told her that I did not want her back. Still, she emotionally blackmailed and said she was blinded by her cousin's wealth, and I should forget this episode and move on in life. I hated seeing her face but wanted to take revenge, so I agreed. The first thing I did when she moved back was to link her WhatsApp to my laptop, and it did not surprise me that Sandra was still in contact with her cousin. She would send him her nude pictures and he would do the same. They would talk for hours when I was not home, and they often talked about arranging another weekend in some other city. I wanted to beat the shit out of her, but that would work against me during the divorce, so I controlled myself. I had to teach them a lesson they would remember for at least an eternity and think twice before cheating on their partners. For the first few days, I was incredibly sweet to her, so that she does not know what I have in store for her. I took her to nice fancy restaurants so she would fall for my trap. When things were normal between us, I took her credit cards to teach her a lesson. She had 2 credit cards. One was her work credit card, which she used to buy office supplies, and incur other petty expenses for her office. And the other card was her personal card, which she barely used as she always used mine. I used both of her credit cards and bought her a bunch of expensive gifts. I disabled the messages and emails that she received from her bank. I gifted her expensive things and she was over the moon and flaunted her stuff. My plan was working. I could not wait for the day when her credit card bill would arrive and she would shit her pants to see the bills. That is when she would realize what it is like to have an expensive taste with no money to afford it. Her cousin was not even here to pay the bills. I literally counted the days till the bill would come and she would be shocked. Plus, I had not withdrawn my divorce case from my lawyer. I wanted to get rid of her as soon as possible because I knew my wife was a gold digger. She promised me that she would not cheat, but I was sure that she would cheat me if she found any other rich guy willing to spend on her or take her to romantic gateways. I also sent messages between Sandra and her AP to his fiancé. I smiled, knowing that now there would not be a wedding and her cousin would regret cheating on her fiancé. As expected, her cousin called Sandra and told her what I had done. Sandra was shocked that I had a copy of their pictures and chat. She confronted me and said I should not have forwarded those personal messages to the fiancé, and then I asked her how she knew. Was she still in contact with her cousin? She was dumbfounded. I opened my Facebook account and messaged the fiancé and told her everything, that his fiancé had been cheating on her back. I even told her that he had been to Miami with my wife. The fiancé was furious and swore to tell everyone in the hospital that he was a cheater who slept with other people's wives by buying them expensive gifts. I told Sandra that I knew she was still in contact with her cousin, but she denied it and started crying to soften me. But I have had enough, so I told her to leave the house and live elsewhere. She begged me to let her stay and told me she would block his cousin, but I did not listen to her. I told her to find a place to crash and wait for the divorce papers. She was shocked as she thought that I had stopped the procedure. She was furious with me and angrily marched out, not knowing she was doomed. A few hours later, she called me and said her credit card exceeded the limit. I felt relieved that she had no money at all. She cursed me and said she would file a case for credit card fraud. But I knew she did not have the guts to do that. Plus, all the online orders had been placed with her information. The best part was that her company would fire her as soon as they will learn about the crazy purchases that she had made from the company's credit card. Now, seeing my wife homeless and begging me to take her back in will be a treat. But I won't. Maybe this way she'll learn the lesson of being grateful and not running behind men with plenty of money in their accounts. I earned well and tried to give her a comfortable life, but it was never enough for her. She wanted a guy who would spend money on her like he had no other work in this world. Unfortunately, I wasn't the one. I worked hard and believed in saving and not throwing around money to show off my luxurious items to others. I'm waiting for her to get fired, and after that, I'll forward all her dirty texts and audio messages she had shared with her boyfriend to her friends, colleagues, and even her family members, so they all can learn what kind of woman she is. You may call me an evil man for plotting all this, but trust me, she deserved it. Now, I really hope that one day, when she struggles to pay her credit card bills, she will remember the life I gave her and how she was always ungrateful. Plus, she left no opportunity to humiliate me in front of her friends and that damn cousin of her. So, what do you guys think of this submission? Is Obi right to take revenge, or should he just divorce his wife and move on with his life? Tell us in the comments below. Also, if you want to see more such stories, hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon to get notified when we post the latest videos.